Hi there, my name is Aaron Short. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I've been doing these interviews now for around 12 months. Can you believe it? And today's guest is exceptional. We're going to talk gear. He's going to play for us and we're going to hang out. If you have questions in the chat, please post them and we'll get to them as we go. But for now, please welcome my guest, Shane Hennessy. How you doing, Shane?
Hey Aaron, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for coming on. This is great. We've met a few times in the past, right? At some fingerstyle events and things like that. And it's great to have you on today. I really appreciate it. Also, thank you so much for doing that duet with me. I got some great responses from our version of Ride On. I really appreciate you doing that. Oh, it's fantastic.
That was a fun thing to do. It's been one of these things that I've been doing a lot of in the last while is collaborations with other musicians because, what else are we doing? If we're sitting at home playing music, we might as well make music with other people. So it was a pleasure to do it.
Well, one good thing we do have from 2020 was time, right? We had time to get back to music and all those things we wanted to be doing. We'll talk about that in a bit. I think before we even get to know who you are, where you're from, I'd like you just to play something, and I think that will say it all to get started with. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a little bit of my tune Avenue. I'm controlling my reverb off my iPad here, so a little bit of Avenue for you.
Very cool. Thank you.
love that.
It's just like playing a real gig, isn't it?
Just exactly the same.
I try my best. Shane, let's keep this informal. As we talk about you, as you play the songs as we go along, let's talk about technique and things that you're using in different songs. So what I noticed there was it kind of had a very Stevie Wonder kind of vibe, very funky, a real groove. You couldn't see me, thankfully. I was sitting here kind of dancing along, and I don't dance. But that means you've got a great groove there. How do you get that groove? So many musicians don't lock into a groove like that, especially on their own without a drummer. How do you get to that point?
Honestly, there's two parts to it. One is that I've always enjoyed that music, and I've always sort of had I suppose, an inherent ability to be able to play in a groove, as in locked in. And the reason that I think that's so strong within me, and I've said this loads of times before, growing up playing Irish traditional music, and like before I was a guitar player, when I was a concertina player, you become so accustomed to playing in different time signatures and really locking into the feel of the music that you're playing, that I think that those skills translate very well when you move on to other styles of music. So, with Irish trad music, I mean, you're playing at 100 miles an hour and everything is like eighth notes or 16th notes, and it's very da 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 da. So from a young age, when I started playing music, I was 4 years old. So I was exposed to that idea of a kind of a very set, locked in rhythm from a very young age. And I think that translated well when I started playing the guitar, in terms of working out how to play, first of all, how to play in time. And second of all, when I developed an interest in kind of, guitar grooves and stuff like that, it definitely helped me to lock into those grooves a lot quicker. So I think that's the first point about those. And the second point is that you do have to practice stuff like that. Not necessarily with a metronome. Most people would assume that you get that groove by playing with a metronome. It's actually not. You learn to play in time by playing with a metronome, but your feel, or the way you lock into a groove or a pocket, that's not something that comes from a metronome. That's something that comes from depending more on your own ability to lock in to your internal metronome. So for example, if I were doing something like that with a metronome, and let's say that's somewhere around 90 beats per minute, I think, somewhere around that. What I might do is I might practice that initially at 90 beats per minute, and then I'd cut it in half and I'd set the metronome to 45 beats a minute, and I'd play at the same tempo. So I'm relying on myself more, not on the metronome, and then cut that in half again. So that brings you down to 22 and a half. Okay, so 22 or 23. And again, if you can cut it down from there, like 11 or that sort of thing, if you can kind of rely on yourself to keep time, I think that kind of naturally progresses as you're more comfortable with your instrument, and as you become more comfortable with the idea of relying on yourself for time rather than depending on a metronome. So I think it's both of those things, both my upbringing and also the way that I actually practice that stuff helps me lock in straight away.
Right. Obviously, growing up, so you grew up in Ireland, that must be a huge help, because the scene there is so... Is it all true? I haven't been there myself, but whenever I watch the movies or talk to other musicians, is it true that people just get there and just play and sing in pubs and bars, and everything's about, like, the whole culture is just about live music? Is it still that way? I mean, forgetting 2020, of course. Is it still that way?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, when I was in college, I didn't study music, I studied psychology when I was in college. But as you know, to make money while I was in college and to kind of start to support myself essentially, and then afterwards, after college as well, I used to play around Dublin, around the city, in different bars and pubs and places like that. And you're talking like 2.5 to 3 hour sets of covers. I'd try and throw in my own pieces here and there where I could. But that's very much part of the culture all around the country, not just kind of the touristy sort of scene I was doing, but more, you go into rural Ireland, say where I'm from here in Carlow, which is about an hour southwest of Dublin. The local pub here before the coronavirus pandemic, there'd be a great session on every Thursday night, and most nights, to be honest, you'd walk in there and you'll find someone. It might be singer-songwriter or like singing ballads. That's a lot more common than kind of singer-songwriter stuff. And a trad session you'll find in different places as well. I mean, I think in my town alone, and it's a fairly small town. It's about 25,000 people, but we've got something like 23 or 4 pubs in town alone, and a lot of them feature live music. So it is very much something you can expect, and it's something that kind of hit me, I think, when I started traveling as a musician. Every now and again, you know, have a day off or after a gig or whatever, and you might go for a drink somewhere. And it was very strange sitting in a pub that didn't have any music in it. That was something. And even still, you know, I go to certain places and they just have a CD or Spotify or one of those things on it. It feels wrong not to have something happening live in a place like that. So yeah, it is very much part of the culture. And the other side of it is, when I was in school, so from age like 4 or 5 upwards, music is not optional in Ireland. You have to do music in school. So I started off, like most kids start off, like pretending to play the bodhrán, which is the Irish drum, and they get like their you know, their A4 pad and a pencil or a pen or whatever, and they play rhythms along just on their refill pad, and then they kind of upgrade to like a tin whistle. And then after that, you know, you pick which instrument you want to play. So most people stick with the tin whistle, but then if you're musically inclined, I tried out the violin, hated it. My family hated me for doing it. Somehow thought the concertina was a better idea, so I picked that up. Santa Claus brought me a concertina when I was 4 or 5, something like that. But that was it. That's what got me started. And the next 8 years of my life, I was just like strictly Irish trad music, and no interest in the radio, no interest in pop music, covers, guitars. I hated guitars. And I remember my mum asked my dad, because my dad's a musician as well, my mum asked him when I was about 9 years old if he would teach me how to play the guitar. And my dad, in fairness to him, he always said, I'm not going to teach Shane unless he really wants to learn. So anyway, he gave in to my mum, and 9 years old, sat me down in the kitchen, got 2 guitars, and he said, okay, try this, and here's a G and here's a D or whatever. And I remember crying, you know, crying at that. And I remember telling my dad, I'm never going to play the guitar. I hate the guitar. And look what happened.
So what was the turning point then? When did you fall in love with it?
It was hearing James Taylor for the first time.
Right.
And I have, my theory about this is that because I chose not to listen to anything else, because I had no interest in what was on the radio or what my parents were listening to or whatever, I kind of shut myself off from the world of music completely, because I only wanted to listen to CDs with concertina music, and that's it. And so when I heard James Taylor for the first time, it was really one of my earliest exposures to harmony, as in extended harmony, because I'd heard a guitar doing... and that didn't really appeal to me all that much. But as soon as I heard someone playing like that sound caught me straight away. I was like, what is that? That's just like really doing the business for me. So I remember asking my dad the same. It was in this Disney film that I was watching at the time. I was about 12, maybe 13 years old. And I remember turning around to my dad and saying, who's that? Like, what music is that? And he was saying, oh, that's James Taylor. And I said, oh, can you teach me that? You play guitar. And Dad was like, no, I can't teach any of that kind of stuff. You know, I don't play any of that finger picking kind of material. So I decided to be stubborn, and Dad had a James Taylor Greatest Hits CD. So I would sit in the kitchen with the CD player and the guitar, and I worked out Fire and Rain and Something in the Way She Moves. And I worked it out by ear. I literally went through each note that he was playing, the same way I would learn a trad tune. I'd listen like G, E, E, B, G, 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 F, G, A, G, F, D, B, B, D, like that kind of idea. Except for I'd take the guitar and I'd go, okay, well, he's playing C, G, and he's playing an E, and then he's moving that G up to an A, and then E up to an F. And I understood music that way. I could pick out each note individually, and that's what taught me how to play the guitar. My dad eventually came back and showed me like the basic chord shapes and stuff, but as far as the finger picking stuff, I taught myself how to do it because of my upbringing in Irish music. I had the skill set to do it.
So that skill set, was it just through playing and playing and playing and listening, or do you have perfect pitch or anything like that?
I found out afterwards I do have perfect pitch, but that's not something I've ever once relied on. I think it's a sort of a useless skill. I don't know why people make such a big deal out of it. It's so much more important to be able to recognize intervals, to have what's called relative pitch. That's way more important. I mean, if I had to give up my perfect pitch in the morning, I would, and it wouldn't make any material difference to me.
Yeah, but that fascinates me, though.
The only time it really comes in handy is, someone says, "Oh, what key are they in?" And I can go A flat. But that's it. You know what I mean? But as far as your question about why I had that skill set, I think it's because when you learn Irish music, you're exposed from a really young age to ear training without knowing that it's ear training. Because a lot of times, I mean, we never got any sort of formal tuition for these songs. You would literally just have a teacher in front of you, and they'd say like, "Okay, here's this week's tune," and it was going to be like. Something like that, and they'd say, "Okay, right, now it's your turn, you play that," and you just have to go, "Okay, I'm listening for G A G G A B D E D G A G A B G D E F A D G," like that. So from a young age, I was able to kind of identify those intervals very quickly. And the other thing is with Irish music, people talk about scales and modes and stuff like that, and that is something that Irish music teaches you without ever knowing that you're learning it. Like there are plenty of tunes that switch between or minor, what you might think of as like a flat 7 or a sharp 7 or a sharp 3 or flat 3, whatever, all that stuff. I'm not the best at explaining that stuff. I can explain it when I need to teach it, but I don't think that way. And again, that's a benefit that Irish music gave me, in that that modal thing never entered into it because it was learned in such a natural way. So I suppose that's what gave me that skill set to be able to pick out all of that stuff.
I'm just so fascinated. I watched Rick Beato talk about perfect pitch, and it just fascinates me. And I always think it must be a great thing to have, like to hear a little tune and know what those notes are. It just blows my mind. It must be cool to have that, right?
Put it this way, right? I thought that everybody had it because it felt so normal. I remember I was sitting in school at one time. I was probably about 15 or 16, sitting in music club, and I remember the teacher at the time playing a note on a piano. And because I told one of my friends, "Oh yeah, the perfect pitch, I think I have it," because I hear notes and I know what they are and whatever. And I remember the teacher like nearly making a fool of me one time because she said, "Okay, what's this note?" And I heard, and I said, "E, that's definitely an E." And she's like, "Haha, no, it's not. And she pressed. It was the note of F, right? But the piano had been detuned, like it was not an in-tune piano. So I was arguing, saying, "Look, you might be playing the key that means F, but I'm telling you, 100% it's an E." And when we checked it out afterwards, yeah, guess what? It was an E. So I mean, it's as I said, it's only really useful if I'm playing with somebody else and they start into something and I need to say, "Okay, what key are they in?" All right, they're in F sharp. Let's go. But other than that, everything else is worked out by feel or by intervals. Like the relative pitch skills are so much more practically useful than having perfect pitch. And it's something I'd happily get rid of in the morning if I needed to, because I don't find it particularly useful except for in that one instance.
Okay.
It's kind of like having perfect pitch, I suppose, is a bit like if I said to you, "Hey Aaron, what colour is the sky today?" And you'd be like, "Well, it's obviously blue. How could it be anything other than blue?" And I'd be like, "Well, I don't know what that colour is. I need a reference to find out what that colour is." And that's the way I've always looked at it. And funnily enough, my partner has it and my uncle has it as well, and I think a cousin of mine has it as well. And it's kind of unusual to have that in families, as far as I know. So it's nice to know a couple of other people who have it as well.
That must be fun. You can just say, "Let's."
Do you know Frano as well? Frano Zivkovic from Croatia.
No.
The young guitar player. He's probably only, I think, 14 or 15 years old. He was at the Chet convention the year we were there. He has it as well. And we have a little joke between us that, we'll sing a note, but say a note name of a different note. So I might go G, and it's actually like B flat, that kind of thing. So it's only in those very specific instances that it comes in handy or funny. But otherwise, like, I'd happily get rid of it in the morning.
Well, first of all, if you want to get rid of it, give it to me. And second of all, it must be great having a family with it, because you can say, "Hey, let's sing an E minor chord," and just do it. Do you know if Chet had it?
Be useful in those. Yeah.
Did Chet Atkins have it?
Don't know that Chet had it. I don't know that many musicians who do have it or who talk about it. I know that I spoke to Tommy Emmanuel about this before, and his pitch is very, very good. I don't think he feels that he has perfect pitch, but I mean, if you ask Tommy, Like if you sat down behind Tommy and just played a chord, he'd straight away go, oh yeah, that's an A, whatever. You know, but it's not necessary. I think his relative pitch, in the same way as I'm talking about it, his ability to identify intervals relative to a note, I think is like spot on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's unshakable, and his rhythm as well is insanely in time. Like I think he actually might have perfect tempo, which is far less common. Where if you told Tommy to like sit on this groove, and you put a metronome against him, like he would not change. Like he is as solid as a rock.
I've seen him do that. I've seen him do that. I went to one of his workshops, one of his camps, and he played with a metronome. He was locking in the groove like you were talking about earlier. And then I think, did he turn it off and keep playing and then turn it back on again? I think he did that, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not surprised.
It was fantastic.
I think he doesn't realize he has that. But
Yeah.
I think that's a skill that, you know, like I have very good time. But I mean, if you put me up against a metronome and played for 2 minutes straight, I don't know how in time I'd be coming back in with the metronome.
That is also just the fact that Tommy's played so much, right? Like he can just hear and things. He's just done it so much. Let's move on.
The more you play and the more experience and exposure you have with music, the more these skills develop.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, have you met our friend Pooh Ninja?
No.
Now you have.
Great name.
They're going to be in all your streams now. Watch out.
Excellent.
Was that first piece you played in standard tuning?
Was it in standard tuning? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was. Yeah, Avenue. Yeah, that's the bit that throws people off is the bit at the start because you're not quite sure what tuning it's in, but it is in standard tuning. Yeah. Yeah, that bit at the start. You know, that kind of like, oh my god, what tuning is this in? It's regular standard tuning. It's just how I use it. I mean, I prefer using standard tuning and drop D mostly, just because I know my way around that tuning so well. I mean, I play a couple of things in like Dadgad. Another one I use occasionally is C, G, D, G, A, D, which is like Dadgad with the D and the A tuned down to C and G. And occasionally, if I'm playing trad, only in specific instances, I'll play in a tuning D, A, D, A, D, E, which is a kind of an unusual tuning I got from a friend of mine that I used to live with. But it's a great way to be able to play melody lines and backing lines, kind of more similar to how a banjo, like a tenor banjo, might do it. But most of the stuff I play is in standard tuning.
I feel bad. I'm completely putting you on the spot today, but now we've spoken about that, can we hear a piece in alternate tuning?
In an alternate tuning, yeah, of course. So, for example, I'll tune it into that C, G, D, G, A, D one that I said.
Awesome.
So this is, let me just get it in tune here. There we go. Stay in tune. There we go. Sign of a good guitar when the strings change when you change another string. There we go. Lovely. So yeah, I'll give you a bit of this. This one is I'll play an Irish piece while I'm at it.
Yeah, please.
This is a piece called well, it's a set called Summer Anywhere from my last album, Idirkill. But this was written about the period of COVID-19 lockdown here in my hometown in Carlow. When things were locked down last year in Ireland, because we locked down just before St. Patrick's Day, which is our national holiday.
Yeah, we did too.
Tomorrow, and all the the usual bunting and the decorations and stuff, they were all left up in like storefronts, shop windows, like the stuff hanging out at the street, and all the decorations, and the parade was cancelled. So all that stuff remained up and visible for weeks afterwards, and possibly months afterwards. And so it was very eerie walking around my hometown, because I live in the centre of town here, walking around while no one else is around. Every shop is shut, and it was supposed to be St. Patrick's Day, and there wasn't a sinner in the town.
Yeah.
So this is, I took the traditional tune, St. Patrick's Day, and then I wrote companion piece to go along with it called Unjig, which is a sort of a schizophrenic kind of a jig that I wrote to go with it. So here we go. Summer Anywhere. And the short reverb for this one. All right. One, two, one, two, three. yeah, summer anyway.
Very, very, very nice. Thank you. And of course, the other reason I wanted to do this today is because St. Patrick's Day is tomorrow.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel the same as you. We locked down a few days before St. Patrick's Day in New York as well. That was such an eerie time, wasn't it? Everything about that was just weird, like a weird dream. It's just so strange.
Oh, completely, yeah. And I remember at the time I was already fairly, you know, annoyed is the wrong. I was a bit deflated because I was supposed to go on tour in the US in March. Starting from I think the 9th or the 10th of March. So I was going to be over there for St. Patrick's Day, and I had about 3 or 4 weeks of shows, like really good opportunities lined up.
Yeah.
And so I was already deflated when the first leg of the trip got cancelled because Nashville, if you remember, was devastated by a storm. Like this tornado came through town and like wiped it out.
Yeah.
And so the first leg of that was kind of in Nashville, in and around that area. And so that was delayed, and I thought, okay, well, at least I'll get out, a week later and kind of start the kind of the theatre side of stuff from there. And then of course COVID hits and there's a travel ban and everything is cancelled, and so it was a tough time last March. But that's when I decided, look, if I'm not doing anything else, I'm going to live stream. I'm going to start teaching guitar again because I hadn't taught in such a long time. I was constantly on the road, gigging, touring. I never really had time for it because I was always sitting in airports waiting for delayed flights. So,
Oh, that's not fun.
Yeah, it was nice to be able to kind of shift direction, I suppose, a little bit once that kind of happened last March. But who would have thought that a year later we're all, well, at least in Ireland here, we're still in lockdown.
Oh wow. I do feel that, I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but the last kind of 7 days I just keep feeling things kind of ramping up. There's talk about they might do some of them. There's all these different things. I of course probably another 12 months for things to really get underway, but I do feel things are starting to turn a little bit, which is great. And that
I
actually,
hope so, yeah, and it's,
I think so.
Yeah, I think so, and it's the last thing that will come back is international travel, unfortunately, without any restrictions. I hope that local stuff comes back, as in if Summer NAMM comes back, well, at least anyone in the USA can go there, or Canada. But over here, I mean, I won't be going over to the far side of the Atlantic until next March at the earliest. And I've kind of made my peace with that as well, in that I'll be at home and that I'll be, continuing to teach, doing my True Fire channel, and kind of working on new music, so that by the time everything gets back, at least I'll be able to hit the ground running. But I learned very quickly not to be putting any pressure on myself, and every musician I've spoken to, be it that they've come to the same conclusion or I've kind of nudged them in that direction, and that, look, there's nothing anyone can do right now. There's nobody in the world except for the mega famous who have publicity teams behind them who can push themselves at this time. You can't push yourself to be creative when there's nothing, really, there's kind of no short-term profit's the wrong word. There's no short-term sort of release for that work, the tension of the creative process and kind of the nervousness of getting it out into the world. I mean, even live streaming at the moment is heavily saturated. Everyone and their mother and their dog is live streaming at the moment. So I mean, look, if your live streams aren't getting the views you want, and it doesn't matter who that is, or I've noticed on my own live streams as well, it doesn't matter. The world's going to come back to normal in the next 12 months, and once we're there, we'll be happy, and everything will get back to as normal as possible.
The thing is, for me personally, I'd started the YouTube thing about 2 years ago, but I was also gigging, and I feel bad saying this now, but I would often say to people, I wish I had more time to make the videos. And then look what happened. So I used it to my advantage. I was like, well, I get to rest my voice, I get to do these interviews or network with people, do the streaming, and if you look at my live streams from 12 months ago compared to how they are now, I mean, now I have things like this. I need to take these to the gigs with me. I'm going to miss them otherwise.
Yeah, you need a little a MIDI trigger pad. Just no one else is going to applaud. You've got to do it yourself.
I know, it's so weird. But no, I'm not a very optimistic person in general. I don't feel, but I can see the benefit in what's happened. I was going to get to that later on. My next question, which you just kind of answered, was, what was your life like before the lockdown? Like, what do you do? Like, I know you've released albums, but what was a typical kind of month like you before we locked down?
An awful lot of touring for me,
Okay.
where I think a lot of people put effort into kind of the online social media stuff. That's all great. It's probably something I should be better at, given that I'm under 30. But I actually put all my efforts into touring and making connections with festivals and theatres and performing arts centres and stuff like that. So I had a very active touring schedule for the last, say, 3 years or so, where I was constantly on the move, mainly kind of North America and Europe, and Russia as well. Russia twice now. But that's what my life was, as I said earlier, kind of hanging around in airports, waiting for the next flight, and kind of while I'm waiting, kind of working out logistics for the next time I'm traveling here, and doing my visa work for this country, and getting my US tax, my central withholding agreement, getting all of that.
And this is fun. This is fun for you, Shane.
Do you know something? There's a part of me that enjoys that sort of administrative side, and I don't know why. I kind of enjoy sitting down and trudging through that stuff. And I think it's because I know that I'm able to do it, and that I like kind of sitting down and going through forms. Like, that's most people's idea of hell. Not for me. I kind of enjoy being that kind of one-man business sort of thing. But I mean, a typical month for me, or a typical week for me prior to the pandemic, would have involved some recording, a lot of practice, usually a lot of travel. When I was home here in Ireland, I might have gigs, I might have session work that I was doing, I might be co-writing over Skype or Zoom or any of those. It was mainly Skype before the pandemic, or even Facebook chat or whatever. So I mean, it's and of course online lessons as well. I've always done as much teaching as I can online because I enjoy it. I tend to learn more myself than the student does when I'm teaching, because I think it's coming from a self-taught background and coming from a sort of a very non-analytical way of learning and kind of progressing on the guitar. It's only when someone pulls me up and says, "Hey, what did you do there?" It's when I have to really think, well, why do I move that, and why does that work, and why is it that works? Oh yeah, okay. And then the light bulbs kind of start turning on in my head, and so when I end up teaching, I actually end up learning more myself, I think, than the students do. But that's kind of a rough idea of what a week in my life would have looked like.
Right. So you were just basically just busy doing all the music stuff all the time, traveling a lot. Yeah. I mean, touring is fun and addictive, isn't it? It's a cool thing. But online again, I'll just say it one more time. Like, when I do a gig online now, I kind of like it because I can control the sound. You never know where in the world people are. I wonder what will happen next. I wonder if our gigs will all be live streamed. So you'll come here and play in a theater and they'll live stream it as well. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how things evolve from this point onwards.
I think that's definitely what will happen. I think that's a market that was never obvious before. It may have been obvious to some. Yeah. I know that Snarky Puppy for the last couple of years have been streaming their gigs, and you can buy them as albums afterwards. Like the day after the show, they do like a quick and dirty mix, send it off to be mastered quickly, and straight away you've got like a new album, a new purchase. So I think that kind of rapid turnaround of stuff is definitely going to become part of the future.
Yeah. Let's jump over to the chat. I don't want to ignore anyone. Right. Andy says, loving the vibe, Shane. I'm an instant fan. Thank you both.
Nice
Great
one, Andy.
viewing.
Thanks a million.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Cheers. Awesome. Patsy Smith says, better than watching the news. Well, I hope so. I think that's a compliment. Graham says, hi, Shane.
Oh, hey, Graham.
Hi,
Good
Graham.
to hear from you.
Our good friend Lee says, the UK news is just comedy. Okay. I try not to watch you have to watch the news these days, but I try not to watch too much news. Graham says
it's good to be informed, but if something major is going to happen, I mean, you're going to hear about it one way or another.
You'll hear about it on Facebook.
I'm as guilty as anyone else of flicking through all the news channels, especially when there's elections on, like in the States or in Ireland or the UK or whatever. I'm an election junkie, but like there comes a point where you have to say, you know what, that's enough news for today and for the rest of the week, and I'm going to actually get on with what I want to do with my life.
Yeah. Now, this is confusing me. Graham said, hi, Graham, says, love the shirt. Now, is he talking about your shirt or my shirt?
He could be talking about both. Graham is, I met Graham in Newcastle when I was recording my last album with Connor Thomas, who's another, you may have come across. He's a fingerstyle guitar player from Seaham, which is just kind of between Sunderland and Newcastle. But Graham and Connor are really good mates, and yeah, it's he's probably talking about my shirt, but I'd say he
I think
could easily be
no. I
talking
think
about yours. I only
I think
saw
he
your
is.
shirt earlier on for the first time. Soundhole sniffer, isn't that what it says?
We do a Martin centric show on Mondays, and Martin guitars
Yeah.
seem to have this amazing smell from the cedar, and everyone started talking about sniffing the sound hole. So I thought that'd be a great T-shirt. So don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to sniff your sound hole on today's show. But yeah, I think he's talking about yours too. That's a nice shirt, I have to say. Oh, you agree? Okay.
Yeah, these kind of floral shirts have become my my signature look over the last few years. And I don't really know where it came from. I bought one and then I started buying more. And then, you know, when I wouldn't wear them, people would be like, where's the shirt? Where's the floral shirt? So I was kind of, I kept it up. I have a friend of mine as well who plays in a band called Wee Banjo 3. He's a great fiddle player named Fergal Scal, and he does the same. He wears red pants to all of his gigs. And if he doesn't wear the red pants, you know, they get more comments and questions about the pants than they do about the music.
Andy says, wow, music should be part of the education curriculum and timetable. It has many benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And, you know, unfortunately, it seems to be, you know, one of the things that gets cut first. Because you can't measure it objectively. You know, with a sports team, you have a team that lost. You have the person who scored the most goals, the person who got the most baskets, whatever it might be. With music, I mean, there's no objective way to measure how good someone is other than competitions, but that's not really an objective measure either. It's a subjective measure. And so I think that it's very easy for people to say, oh, music, sure, you know, if people want to learn music, they can do it anyway. You know, but people forget how many bridges that music builds between people, between communities. And David Crosby said one time, and it's the truth, is that music is the opposite of war. War is destruction and music is pure creation.
Yeah.
And especially when you bring people from different backgrounds to play music together. It might take them a while to figure out what they can play or what they can do, but there's a sort of a world, kind of a mutual appreciation in the world of good music and also of music that speaks to you. Usually kind of, you know, soft ballads and kind of those kind of haunting, beautiful melodies, universal. You know, all the stuff that we know as Irish music or music from Iran or music from West Africa or music from China or whatever it might be. You know, they all have their different instruments and their timbres and whatever else. But what's universal about all of those styles of music, for the most part, is beautiful melodies. And you can transpose them or take them from one culture to another, and they'll have exactly the same effect. And Tommy Emmanuel said it, I heard him say it at a very young age, and it's very true. When you've got a good groove, you know, and not grooves just as in like funk music or anything. A good groove is in when you really get into the pocket of something, when you really get into the flow of something, that gets past anybody, any background, any, you know, bias they might have. That's like a winner. You're straight into the kind of the human soul there. So I find that really important when I'm approaching music, and that you have to find the flow of the music.
That is a reason why I've always loved that song, Ride On. It's incredibly simple. It's got a beautiful melody and hook, and the lyrics are so clever because no one really knows what it's about, and it's just everything to me. That song just encapsulates all that sense together. In fact, I think that's a good place to. I've just got a short clip, and if you're watching, please check out the full video on my channel. And remember, tomorrow is St. Patrick's, so please share it with your friends. I'd appreciate it. We'll just play a very quick clip. Actually, I'm going to ask you about the little solo you played here as well, because I thought it was very clever. So here's Ride On. Ride on, see you. I could never go with you, no matter how I wanted to. Into the night without a trace behind, run your claw along my gut one last time. Would it be weird to give myself a round of applause? I'll give myself one of my round of applauses. Ready?
Imagine I'm doing it.
Way. That's what I get.
Your voice really suits that song. It was actually very nice to track that, because some people, for example, "Imagine" by John Lennon. I heard Tommy say this before, that some people shouldn't sing it, and he's right. In that it's not the voice, it's the feeling of it or whatever. And I think you got that across nicely in your
Thank
version,
you.
so.
I think you're talking about the Wonder Woman actress who sang it on during lockdown, right?
Oh, the celebrity. Yeah, that was not great.
No, I appreciate it. I think that's the kind of music, again, that I kind of grew up singing. Again, like James Taylor type, baritone type stuff. And yeah, I just love the simplicity, and I love the solo you played. I'm not just saying that. That's the kind of solo I like. Very melodic, very tasteful. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I saw the video of you playing it. Are you kind of like using open strings there?
Yeah, I mean, that was improvised. I mean, I'm trying to remember what I played there just from hearing it. But something like that, there are kind of two factors. One is what will suit the feel of the song, and B, what feels feasible to do today on the guitar. Like, for example, you've probably felt this as well, in that some days I feel like the guitar can sustain forever. Some days I feel like the guitar is like a wet rag with strings on it, and I need to kind of work around the limitations that I have. So it's not always necessarily that I sit down and plan a solo, and that can work really, really well if you're recording something, because you can get the feel just right, and the temperature of the solo, you can get that right. But for something like that, the open strings thing, from what I'm remembering that I played there, it was something like this. Something like that.
Yeah.
So that's going up through, I mean, it's some type of A minor, is it? It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. But so it's going up in steps through that scale, but anywhere that I can utilize an open string, I'll do it. So that A string is open, then B and C are fretted, but they're ringing into each other. The B is ringing, then the C is ringing, then the D is ringing. So I've got 3 notes ringing. Then I move on. My next open string is a G. So I get the E and the F, G, they're ringing together. Then A, B is an open string. C and D is fretted notes. E is an open string. F is a fretted note, like that. So I'm using the kind of the sustain of the guitar to my advantage.
Yes.
There, because the Maytones, they sustain really, really well as guitars. Like, they're really playable. Very, very good sustain, and so that it's suited that track really well to use the Maytone on it. And and that type of solo for me is a lot more in keeping with the vibe of the song, because I think a mistake that people make is that they go for a solo and they try and say, okay, this is my time to show off, and that can be great depending on the song. Like, if you're in a blues jam or something like that, and it's high energy, go for it, absolutely, fly your kite. But in a song like that, you can't go mad, because it doesn't suit the kind of the airy, sort of nearly wistful vibe of the song. So it's nearly like something Mark Knopfler would do in a situation like that, where you kind of, not the first part so much, but that kind of
a little bit bluesy, but I like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But that was something I just came up with kind of on the spur of the moment.
It's hard.
Yeah, but that's...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's amazing how hard it is to find people to work with and jam with that do respect the song. But so many people don't respect the song. They just play... Or some people respect the song in a kind of mechanical way. Like, oh, I think I should play this. Yep. And that's something I always loved. Whenever I went to those Tommy camps and played... I was going to try not to mention Tommy Emmanuel today, but how can you not, right? When I go to his camps and I had 2 chances to play with him, he was so tasteful in what he played. It just blew my mind, because I've worked with so many musicians over the years that will just shred, or just, or play something very textbook that doesn't really work musically. And what you did with that solo, it just fits so well. The ringing notes, the dissonance against the kind of mysterious tune, and then the little blues thing at the end. I really like that.
That's the idea, and that comes from listening. I mean, there's a couple of kind of elements to me as a musician that kind of inform that. One is that I am a songwriter. I write songs with people, sometimes for myself, but mostly for other people. And so when you get into thinking of music as having a specific feeling rather than just being a piece of music that you just take at kind of face value and say, oh, look, this is in this, and then this goes here, and then this change happens here. That's something that's very easy to fall into when you've got your kind of musician cap on, or rather your instrumentalist cap on. But if you're looking at it from a more kind of a more visceral point of view rather than a cerebral point of view, the visceral side is like the raw emotion. So you're thinking, okay, well, you know, what is Ride On about? What are the lyrics about? And as you said earlier, they're not instantly clear, but it's generally, it's kind of, there's a feeling of longing from it. There's a feeling of admiration from it. So you want something that kind of, you know, if you're thinking about longing and admiration, you're not playing 30-second notes up here. You're thinking of something that kind of fits that vibe.
Yeah.
And so lyrics can be really important in how that you kind of approach a song like that, because it puts you in a certain mindset, or at least it does for me. When I was younger, that's not something that would have entered my mind at all. I wouldn't have been interested in lyrics. I just wanted to see a cool solo and then rip up here and
Exactly, yeah.
And
it comes
that's
with
cool,
time,
and
right?
you can, you know, and yeah, I learned how to do all that stuff, but it's you realize that once you get over your phase of playing fast and playing cool stuff, that when you actually match the feeling of the music in your guitar part, be it a backing part or a lead part or whatever it might be, that is infinitely more fulfilling than kind of the more adolescent view, I suppose, of what should go into something like that, or a less matured, I suppose.
Yeah, you've got to serve the song, definitely. All right, I'm going to jump over to our chat comments, and then I'm going to talk to you about gear. So Lee says, by the way, Lee, nice T-shirt. I learned I'm terrible. I learned the same way listening to a Donovan CD on my own in the caravan. That's how we learned the guitar. Was that Donovan or Jason Donovan, Lee? No, please clarify. Andy says Thin Lizzy is full of information. Maybe that is how I learned. Thin Lizzy.
Thin Lizzy, absolutely. Love Thin Lizzy.
Are they an Irish band?
Yeah.
I thought so. They did Whiskey in the Jar, right?
Whiskey in the Jar and Dance in the Moonlight, and the boys are back in town. You know, it's great songs.
John says, cool video, going to finish watching later. Thank you, John. Remember, this is on demand, so to speak. You can send it around to your friends and they can watch it later. Mark is watching from Illinois. Have you played in Chicago? A great place.
Yeah, I've played plenty of times in Chicago. I was actually supposed to be on that tour in March that got cancelled. I was supposed to be on a radio show called The Midnight Special, which everyone I ask who's from Chicago seems to know about that radio show. So I was really excited to be on that. But I've played in Chicago a few times now. But funnily enough, I've never had any free time in it. Anytime I've been in Chicago or that area, I've been kind of straight into the venue, do my show, and then I'm gone somewhere else. I've never actually spent any time in downtown Chicago.
It's a great, one of my favorite places. It's a really, really cool place. Jim says, to be able to tune a guitar by ear, so envious.
You can. It just takes practice. You can do it. I mean, if it's not something you can do straight away, it's something you can definitely practice. I mean, you know, when I learned initially about tuning guitars, you know, there was the whole method of trying to match up, you know, the 5th fret with the next string, 5th fret with the next string, 5th fret with the next string, 4th fret, or the harmonics. That kind of idea as well. And then, you know, finding ways to make sure it's in tune. For example, like playing a big modal chord, or not really a modal chord, but like an E5 chord, a chord that only has an E and a B in it. So like, you know, that just has E and B, and that can tell you straight away whether or not something is wrong. You know, same here.
I don't want to keep talking about perfect pitch, but like if you're recording something, does that mean, does perfect pitch mean you can tune your guitar without a tuner? Is it that accurate, or do you still use a tuner when you record an album?
I still use a tuner just to be sure, because I don't want to, you know, it's more about the routine rather than depending on my ear. I mean, put it this way, could I get it bang on 440? Probably, but I couldn't guarantee it. I know that it's going to be like I know that I'm going to be like a cent or two, or maybe 2 cents either side. That kind of accuracy. But I mean, some people have it to a scary degree. Like I know that my partner, she's got it to a point where like she can really differentiate like the microtones. It's scary that how she can do it. Mine is not as good as hers. So there are different levels of kind of perfect pitch as well. But again, to come back to that, another big misconception is that, it must really annoy you when things are out of tune, or things
must drive you crazy.
Aren't perfectly well. Yeah, tuning for me, so long as everything is in tune relative with itself, that's great. If stuff is out of tune, I mean, it drives me crazy as much as any other musician. I don't think it drives me any more or less crazy, but the idea that if something isn't tuned to 440 that it'll annoy me, like if it's tuned but it might be a couple of cents sharp or flat, that doesn't annoy me. It's just this is just kind of an arbitrary reference to a certain pitch, but it doesn't actually mean that it must be 440 or I go crazy. You know what I mean?
But James Taylor uses non-standard tuning on some. Have you seen that video?
I saw a video about that before, and I copied his approach, and I didn't get the same results at all. And I reckon it could be to do with the setup of his guitar, that he gets those results. I mean, there's a luthier in Sweden whose name I can't think of, who developed like a fret by fret, like a really, really exact equal temperament system for the guitar. I think it's like, is it like Thomas Sandon or Sands, something like that.
Thomas Sands, yeah, like Sands guitars.
No, he's in the UK. I actually met him in Newcastle when I was over there with Connor and Graham. He's a lovely guy, and his and Daisy as well, who works with him. She's gone out on her own now on Tempest guitars.
Yeah, you know her.
But Thomas Sanders or Sanderson or something like that, he developed this like equal temperament system for the guitar, and the frets look like they've been mangled, like someone's run over the frets and then reinstalled them in the guitar. They look like jaggedy, like a shark has bitten them up or something like that. But he developed one of those like equal temperament systems for the guitar. But I think going back to what you said about that James Taylor system, I mean, I tried that before and it didn't work for me at all. Like when I tune up with the tuner, it's usually fairly spot on, and then I make any adjustments I need to by ear, because you can rely on a tuner to get you like 99% of the way there, definitely, and then the last 1% might just be a little bit of tweaking by ear. When the tuner doesn't hear something like spot on.
So Shane, you and your partner both have perfect pitch, so therefore you have a very harmonious relationship. I just thought of that. And that was a real laugh. That's not a fake laugh.
I was expecting the applause. You got me.
I was actually going to say, are we laughing at the sound effect? I was actually going to say, Jim, try tuning your guitar with your fingers, not with your ear. I think that's a Tommy joke. Anyway, Andy says lockdown has denied us so much Guinness. We have to agree with that. I mean, what the bar's been doing the last 12 months? Crazy.
That's it. I haven't had a pint of Guinness in a long, long time.
Yeah, me too.
It's not the same from a can. It has to be from the tap.
I almost brought one on today, but I couldn't find one at the local... we use that delivery app now where they bring the groceries. They didn't have any Guinness, sadly. Roeth says, hi all, glad I was able to join, albeit late, no problem, Roeth. Love Irish guitar, beautiful playing. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And don't forget, you can go and subscribe to Shane. So your YouTube channel is Shane Hennessy Music?
Shane Hennessy Music.
Yep. So go and subscribe over there when we're done. Lee says Guineas. I think he means Guinness. I can't drink enough. Patsy Smith said, the Irish tune you played sounds very Irish. Well, I would hope so.
Yeah, well, the first part of it is a traditional tune called St. Patrick's Day. It's a very common set dance over here. So any person who's kind of ever studied Irish dancing in any way will definitely know that tune, because this time of year, of course, everyone dances it, and it's very, very set in its ways. But as I said, the artistic idea was to write a companion piece to it, kind of showed how upside down everything was.
Yeah,
so that's
nice.
unjig. So it's the first track on my last album, Idirhill, and it's called Summer Anywhere.
She says you make the guitar sing. I agree.
Oh, thank you, Patsy.
Can you read this for me? You can see the comments, right?
Yeah. Oh, Stefan. And Stefan, ítach ar fada wachban. Castíl chochrechtut van sundul sul gmorle hu ekal and mohor arish machan sho. Stefan is that's Irish Gaelic, of course.
Wow.
Stefan is in a band called Shullin, and they're a great bunch of musicians, and we had great crack out in, where was it? It was Iowa and Milwaukee, and some of the Irish Fest scene in the States. I mean, we've done a couple of the festivals together. Great bunch of people and great fun to be around as well. But all of us would have been involved, like when we were in college, we were all involved kind of with that kind of Irish language scene. And I know that their band Shull In, they like went viral online because they started singing a lot of the kind of the pop songs of the time, like the Avicii and stuff like that. They translate those into Irish Gaelic, and they do them with, like, you know, the kids in Ireland during the summer. They go over to the west of Ireland, or to sometimes the north or the south, west as well. And they learn Irish kind of for like an intensive camp. We call it the Gaeltacht, and they were really heavily involved with one of those over in the west of Ireland, over in Galway. So they have a strong connection there, but they're a great bunch of people. And Stefan, the guy who wrote that comment, is one of the best front men I've ever seen. I saw him in Iowa last year, and he just took over the stage.
Awesome.
So
Can you translate for us, please?
Oh, yeah. So, Inta her father walk bon, kind of. It doesn't. The last part doesn't translate particularly well into English, but it means fantastic altogether, kind of chap. And then Castil Rochrete wet Morris Undul. It says playing from you as always, or as normal. Sul gemor le hua ekyal an moher erist amachan show, which means I'm really looking forward to seeing you out on the road again in the future.
Also, for any international viewers, can you explain what Irish crack means?
Sorry, say that again, Aaron. You cut out a bit.
I said, for any international viewers, can you explain what crack means in Ireland?
Ah, yeah, crack means fun. Yeah, it doesn't mean
just to clarify.
Yeah, you know, a friend of mine, and I wouldn't have believed this only for I saw it happening. A friend of mine's mother got detained at the airport in Dublin.
I can imagine.
Because of saying, "What are you going over to the States for?" And she said, "Oh, sure, for a bit of crack."
No way.
And that poor woman, like, it was her first time on the job. You know, she hadn't been told, like, this is a word that they use here, so just watch out for that. You know?
I was just kidding, but yeah, I guess that could happen. You gotta be careful. Walter Hennessy, I suppose is a relation. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for watching.
Miriam says Fab.
Oh, hey, Miriam. Miriam's watching up in Dublin, and actually Miriam's brother, Niall Brennan, he's plays Dublin. And I remember when I was just starting on the guitar, he gave me a list of names to look up, because James Taylor was my only guitar influence at the time. And he gave me a list of names to look up. And over the years, I went through every single one of those names, and they all turned out to be brilliant recommendations. Like, it started off with Andy Mckee. And it was around the time that Andy Mckee had just appeared on YouTube, and he was playing drifting and stuff like that. And his opening line was, "You want to see this guy, Andy Mckee? He plays all of his chords upside down." So, of course, my 12-year-old or 13-year-old brain was like, that sounds cool. So I went and checked that out. And then from there, he said, you have to look up Preston Reed, same kind of, percussive guitar style. Tommy Emmanuel was on the list. And he gave me a couple of other names as well of different musicians. But he also, the last one that I looked into was Steely Dan. That took me a while to come around to, but when I got into Steely Dan, I was like, oh my God, this is me to a T. This is what I love. So Niall was a fantastic person to meet along the journey. And he's a cousin of mine as well.
Oh, great.
He's my mum's first cousin, I think it is, so it makes me first cousin once removed. So yeah, he set me on a very good path at a very early age.
Our next comment leads me well into the gear thing. You and that McNally sounds wonderful. Now, I've met you, as I said at the start, at the Tommy Emmanuel, Chet Atkins conventions. We see a lot of Maton guitars there, because that's what Tommy plays. So what guitars do you currently play, and what are your thoughts on gear? Can you talk us through what your kind of rig, your live rig, looks like?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll start with the guitars. So mainly, at the moment, I'm using these McNally guitars. I usually have my custom shop Maton with me, but that has, since I came back from tour, really, that has been in a luthier's workshop getting repairs, because it was unfortunately very badly waterlogged and damaged. So I'm still waiting on getting that back. I mean, the guitar had lost all of its voice. So I'm waiting on getting that back at the moment. And in the meantime, Maton were really kind to lend me this 808. It's a Michael Fix model, but their dealer in Ireland, he sorted it out for me. And they gave me this 808 to tide me over. So... So thank you, a public thank you to Maton for sending me this guitar and allowing me to keep it for as long as I've had it.
I have to say, Shane, Maton are incredibly friendly and nice people, and their players as well. Like when I posted our song in their group, they're so supportive and kind and nice, and the company. Like I had the CEO on here, had Patrick on here.
He's a lovely guy.
I'm not saying that other brands are not, but Maton are particularly friendly people, really really nice people.
Certainly are, and they've helped me a lot over the years as well. And I was kind of instrumental in kind of introducing them to Ireland here as
Oh
well.
wow, that's
It's
cool.
kind of it's a long story. I won't get into it now, but yeah, the Maton is kind of, I had a big hand in getting them into the country, starting off here. So it's nice to be able, we've both helped each other an awful lot along the way
That's what
over
it's
the years.
about.
And then with the McNally guitars here, Kieran McNally is a guitar luthier based in County Armagh, in Northern Ireland, and I had heard of his guitars for years, and I played one of them in Dublin maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I remember thinking this is an amazing guitar, but I wasn't looking for a new guitar at the time. And then it was through Instagram he reached out to me, and he was like, "Look, I'm interested in how you play the guitar, and I'm a fan of yours, and would you be interested in trying one of the guitars?" And my initial reaction was the same to every guitar luthier who writes out to me and saying, "Look, it's not that I have an exclusive deal that I have to play one guitar or whatever, but I've found that Maton suits my style, and luthier made guitars usually don't work for me. I'd much rather pick up like a Takamine or like a Martin or something I can pick up off the wall and adjust and play." Not only because as a touring musician you want something you can kind of get like that's widely available that you can rely on, but also I find that most luthier built guitars, they're really jacked up to like amplify and really intensify every note that comes out of the guitar. So it's nearly like the guitar is more like a piano when it comes out, and that it rings and it has overtones, and and it'll look amazing. But the thing is that because of the way I play, which can be very aggressive at times, sometimes guitars like that completely choke. So I've different luthier made guitars over the years, and I've gotten rid of all of them, and the reason is that they're great when you play quietly, or you play that percussive style where the open strings are able to ring and it sustains forever, and that's all fine. But if I want to get snappy with a guitar, like most of them can't handle that kind of stuff, and when I launch into a funk groove, so like most of them, they just completely choke when something like that happens. So when Kieran wrote out to me, it was the same thing. I was like, "Look, McNally guitars, lovely, not sure if it's for me or not." And he said, "No, I'm actually kind of interested in the way you play and how that might affect how I build a guitar." So I remember I met up with him just before the lockdown.
Wow.
I'd recorded my album Raindance in Newcastle. I flew from there to Germany to do a weekend of shows and a teaching camp that I was like the main instructor at. And then I flew back from Germany via, I think it was Stansted Airport. He was living in Margate at the time. And I went out to Margate, visited his workshop there. And we tried out a couple of the guitars that he had there. And I said, "Look, it's the same thing. These guitars are phenomenal guitars, but they don't necessarily suit what I do." And he's like, "No, this is what I want to work on." So we worked together on developing a kind of a luthier built guitar, but that would be kind of acoustically constrained in a way that would be unusual for a kind of a builder like him. And we ended up making a very, very nice, a very playable, and a very kind of dynamic guitar. It's a very versatile guitar. And the other thing I said as well is that, look, Maton are known for their pickups, and I don't really trust anyone else with pickups. And I said, there's maybe one other guy who I think could do a good job. Is a guy named Udo Rossner. He's just come back onto the scene making amps and pickups and that kind of stuff. So we could try out one of his pickups and see what they're like. And so when we got the prototype of the guitar kind of designed and we were all happy, we got Udo on board from Germany, and he sent me over. And you'll notice that my pickup here isn't even anodized. I've written on it in marker what each of these sliders and this little knob here, what they all are. But he sent me over the prototype, 2 different prototypes of pickups.
Wow.
And I installed them in the 2 guitars that Kieran has made. So Kieran made this guitar, which is an Adirondack top and a Honduras rosewood back and sides.
Wow.
And this is like an acoustic cannon of a guitar. and this has the Udo Rosner hash pickup installed in it. So it just has two controls, like a volume and a mic blend inside the sound hole. But that's kind of more for recording and kind of that like pure acoustic tone. Whereas this then, my signature model, has got the onboard pickup, and that's his brackets system. And they're only starting to become available now. As I said, these are the prototypes that I have in my guitars, but I was blown away when I heard them for the first time.
So
They're definitely
what is that? So I'm really interested now because I review pickups on my channel. I've got like 20 pickup reviews. So please, can you just give us a lowdown on that system? Like what's in that guitar then, and what do the controls do on the top?
Oh, well, as far as the technical detail, I'm not the person to ask because I don't really, I'm just like, if it sounds good, great. It's got a volume slider on it, and it's got a mic slider on it as well. So you can choose to have like volume at 100% and then mic, up to 0 to 100. I think the volume slider also controls how much mic is in it, so the volume is like a master volume.
Right.
And then the two sliders on the bottom, you've got a treble slider and a bass slider as well. So there's no mid-range on this, but there's a point to it because there's also a presence knob, which I find probably more useful than the mid-range knob, because at least on my Maton guitar, when I've got that plugged in, the mid-range usually stays at 12 o'clock no matter what I'm doing, really.
Yeah, me too.
So the mid-range wasn't really as important for me because I like a kind of a very present and strong mid-range in the system. So I didn't think that was particularly important. But what I was keen on getting was a presence knob, because I find that makes more of a difference to me through an amp and through a PA system than the mid-range does. The mid-range kind of, at least with a guitar like this or with the Maton, it nearly takes care of itself. That's a weird thing to say, because that's where all the tone is. But it's like I have to craft the frequencies around that and nearly take out what I don't want rather than having to add something in. So it's kind of, Udo's telling me it's an old school design because it's actually a screw for presence adjuster. You can't do it with your fingers normally. You have to get a little have I got it here? Had I known I was going to be talking about this, I would have prepared for it, but there's a little kind of screwdriver style tool that I use, and I use that to adjust the presence on the guitar. So I think on the next version we're going to turn that into a knob instead. But it's a phenomenal pickup, and I'm really amazed by his iterations of the prototypes of the pickup. I mean, it's really, really clear and powerful. And so I'm excited to see his next move, because I also use his amplifiers as well. His Udo Rosner Da Capo 75. That's what I use as my amp and also my preamp. And I haven't got to gig it yet, unfortunately. I gigged it once for this live stream I did just before Christmas down in County Wexford. That when I get back gigging, that will be my line into the PA system.
I got to check that out though. When I was at Windham last year, I met Udo for the first time, and he just, for anyone that doesn't know, he left he was with AER, he moved on from AER himself, and he had that amp there. I checked that out, and it was funny because I'd recently tried the AER pickup, but I said to him I had all these problems with it. The cable wouldn't fit through the hole that was drilled in the guitar, so I'm gonna have to cut it and then solder it. I said, it makes no sense, Udo. He said, that's not my pickup. That's the AER version. That's not what I made, he said. So I was like, oh, wow. And now you're telling me he's been doing some development since then as well. I'll definitely be looking into that.
This hash pickup in particular that he has, it's just I'm probably going to use the wrong words here, but I mean, it's just a piezo pickup. And it's got a microphone installed, but in the place you'd never guess. It's like down here on the guitar, and the microphone faces towards the side of the guitar, because he figured out whatever way he manipulates the microphone in there, the microphone is actually hard installed onto the end pin jack. But it works. It really, really works. I've been blown away every time. I remember, unfortunately, I got a video of the first time I plugged it in Kieran McNally's workshop, and unfortunately the video is blurry, so we can't use it. But it's a 5-minute video of me freaking out listening to the sound of the pickup and the amp. That kind of combination is a real winner. So I love, like, the McNallys and the Matons. I love them equally for different reasons. The Maton suits some stuff better. The McNally suits some stuff better. I think for the kind of the sound, the individual sound I've developed away from the thumb picking style, the McNally definitely suits that more, because it's got a much kind of wider sort of kind of mid-range, and it's not as sharp maybe as the Maton, but for the kind of the faster stuff, kind of more in the vein of Chet and Tommy, Jerry Reed, that kind of stuff, the Maton probably still has an edge there as well. So I mean, I'm using both of them for different reasons, different sounds.
They're kind of similar body styles and pickup systems, aren't they? They're kind of similar kind of vibe, but that's really cool. I've never heard of these guitars, so thanks for bringing it to our attention, and I'll definitely check out that pickup soon as well. Let's talk about other things. Like, did I not see you use a thumb pick so far? Do you use a thumb pick when you play?
Yeah. Have I used one yet? Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I don't know. I use thumb picks. I use snap picks. I mean, I use various. I got a couple of them together here just because I thought we might be talking about this kind of thing. So yeah, as far as thumbs, I just used the Jim Dunlop, like the white or the brown standard medium-sized thumb picks. The one thing you might notice about the way I use the thumb pick is that I probably wear it a little further back than most people on my thumb. So if I bring that up close there like that, or rather this way, it's not necessarily in the middle of the thumb as most people would have it. It's a bit back towards this little joint here, and it's because at an early age I thought that I was getting a better kind of boom chicks by bringing it back. So it's I have no reverb on, but it's okay. So yeah, to get this sound. To get that sort of chug out of the guitar, I found that it was only moving the thumb pick back on my thumb that I got that sort of aggression that I wanted. And the other side of it is the stuff that I play that is more kind of funk influenced and kind of, you know, to get the right attack for that. And my action's a little bit too high for this at the moment, but to get the right attack for that, I found that keeping the thumb pick at the top of my thumb never felt right. Like Emil Ernebro plays that way and he gets a great tone from it. But for me, I drag it right back, so it's like a nail digging the guitar, and that gives me the aggression that I need in the low end. You know, and that's where that sound comes from, is that the thumb pick is pulled right back on my thumb.
So how would that sound if you didn't use the thumb pick?
If I didn't use the thumb pick. Similarities, but not as defined in my ear. So I don't get the kind of the slap that I want off the kind of the lower end of the strings.
Next question was, that plugged-in bass sound is massive. Is that the Udo Rosner pickup? Yes, it is that pickup, but the bass sound, the massive bass sound, is actually the Boss pedal, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I've turned the Boss pedal. I think during that Thin Lizzy thing that I played, I turned it on. But yeah, at the moment what you're hearing is, and I don't have any reverb on or anything like that, but this is a combination of these microphones here. That should be in your left ear, right ear, and in the middle, and then the pickup as well. So it's a combination of. But what I've got as well on my pedal board down here is I've got a Boss Super Octave, an OC3. And that is kind of like my secret weapon at gigs, in that I'll play, you know, most of a tune or something like that. And if you use an octave sparingly, like in the right places, it can be super, super effective. So for example, like there's a version of Let's Dance that I do by David Bowie. And the first time around I'll play that, it'll be like... like that. But then if I turn the octave pedal on, kind of as I'm coming towards the end of that, it sounds like this. So you get this huge low end that comes in that you don't realize isn't there until it appears. But like the trick to this, and people get this, and the first thing they do is, they tune down to drop D and they hit a B. That's not the way to do it, because that'll sound absolutely crap if you do it. But the only way to get this to sound good is if your playing is controlled and you're muting along with this as well. Like Irish trad players have used this octave kind of effect for years. The first guy I ever saw do this was a musician named Hennessy. And I remember being on holidays with my family in Dingle in County Kerry. And myself and my dad were sitting in this pub and we were listening to this trad band playing. But the guitar player was getting this unbelievable tone. And he was kind of playing, let's see, he was playing something, I suppose it sounded a bit like this. Okay, now the bass pedal is on there. You don't really notice until you take it away. Bring it back in. And it's when you mute strings and you kind of treat it that way, as opposed to just letting strings ring out. That's when a bass, like an octave pedal, sounds really, really good. So I will use that as little as I possibly can, because that way you keep the effect of the bass pedal. It's like when people, it's like pulling the rug out from under people, and they go, oh my God, I didn't realize that sound was there. You know what I mean? So I have to be really careful about how I use it, but that is a really powerful tool to have in your arsenal, particularly as a solo guitar player, you know, to have that low end effect.
Do you use loopers and things like that?
To practice, I do. Yeah, I mean, I don't really use them on stage as much, and it's not that I have an aversion to them. I just haven't gotten into, you know, using them as part of my solo kind of routine or whatever. I like using it to practice. I like putting down chord progressions and soloing over them, or I like putting down ideas and maybe trying to sing over them or whatever, but I don't really... I use it as an integral part of any of my compositions, because I like being able to play everything I write away from kind of technology as well. Like if I'm just sitting with the guitar, I like being able to do that on my own as well.
So how into technology are you? Someone just asked if you would ever play one of the new Fender released a new Acoustasonic guitar today. Like, do you have any?
I've seen those. I haven't played one yet, but I'm you know, it's put it this way. I think for me, because I worked in music retail for a while,
all right,
gear and guitars and equipment and stuff like never makes any impact on me. I don't care about gear. I don't care about microphones, about vintage guitars. I'm the worst person to ask about any of that stuff, because I'm genuinely just like, you know, the way you've probably been at, like, you know, at the likes of NAMM or the Chet convention or whatever, people talk about gear all day and they love talking about gear, but I'm the opposite. I'm like, I don't care what guitar anyone is using or what pedal they used or what anything, you know. It's like, if I can find something that works, that sounds good, great, I'm going to use it until I try something that sounds better, and then I'll use that instead. And it's like, I have no time at all for getting into like equipment, especially like then you get into studio equipment and compressors and analog gear.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I don't have enough.
Yeah.
I don't have enough brain power for that kind of stuff, or at least the brain power I have, I want to put it somewhere else and not into gear. I let someone else worry about all that stuff.
It's funny though. I wasn't into. I'm 40 now, and I wasn't into gear until I was like 35, maybe. It's like, and the internet has kind of pushed that as well. Like it's become like a club, hasn't it? Like a hobby, like a thing. Yeah, I don't know. I like it. I like the creative elements it gives. And there's just so much of it now. You're right. It's so hard to keep up. And with the recording, like sitting down at Logic and trying to mix and figure that out, and then I want to do a band song next, and it's like, what? How do I compress the drums? How do I EQ the voice? There's so many rabbit holes in music, but I think that also keeps it interesting as well, because there's just so much to it all. But I get it.
It's very unlikely that you're ever going to learn everything. I mean, if you learn the technical end of it, then you have to jump into, okay, well, there's also the music theory end of it, and then there's also the actual practical application of, well, how am I going to set all this gear up when I tour, and how am I going to bring that setup with me if I want this exact sound? And so it's kind of a snowballing sort of avalanche of, I thought I'm done.
It's a rabbit hole.
So
rabbit hole.
For me, it's not really a conscious choice, but it's it's just an area I have and I can't see myself being interested in that either. That might change in the future. I might become Mr. Gear, Mr. Equipment or whatever, but as of this moment, I have a guitar that works, I have an amp that works, and I know how to get the sound that I want into a stream to be able to talk to Aaron in New York, and that's all I care about.
Well, you do have a very interesting setup there. Now, I tend to put my pickup. The reason I'm so interested in pickups is I tend to use that alone for looping. So that's why that sound is so important to me. And then when I do these Monday shows, Maury uses his 2 microphones, which is an amazing sound. And now I'm used to that sound. I'm trying to get closer to that sound. What you're doing here, and if you could just show, well, you showed me before we started. You've got a mic to the left, a mic to the right, a mic in the middle, and the pickup. And this is a heck of a live streaming setup. Can you just tell us quickly about that?
Well, yeah, this is, I suppose, something that came out of, not necessity, but I mean, when streaming started becoming really, really kind of popular, I suppose, at the beginning of the pandemic last year, everyone, as I said earlier, was streaming, and most of them were just setting up their phone and kind of hoping for the best. And I thought, well, look, I've seen these people online. Like, I'm not really into it, but my sisters are into kind of like those gaming streams and stuff like that. And I've seen, if they can get the audio from their games and stuff and route it in some way that it comes out on Twitch or whatever it might be, surely I can get the audio from like Logic or Pro Tools onto the internet. So I found out that, okay, Logic and Pro Tools, they don't work particularly well for streaming. So I said, right, what's the next best solution I can think of? Well, I found out that I can use my interface. Okay, so I have 2 inputs on a little small interface here. But again, I'm limited then to 1 microphone and 1 maybe DI line or something like that. And I'm thinking, well, usually when I gig, I've got 3 lines or maybe 4 lines. So I had my Mckee system. It's a DL32R. And that's a system that both myself and my father would have used for gigging in Ireland. I mean, Dad did a lot of work as a sound engineer as well, and he was a tour manager for Sinead O'Connor as well. So, I mean, he's kind of really steeped in music. He knows his stuff. And so this is his system, his Mckee system, that I've sort of inherited. And it's a 32-channel interface, which means you can plug in whatever you want into it. But the trick is, instead of using that to go into the laptop or into the computer, I took the left and the right out, as if you were doing a live gig, as in what would usually go into the speakers in the PA system. I put those into my 2-channel interface, because what I found out was, and as we spoke about this just before we went live, for whatever reason, if you have an interface that has more than 2 inputs, it just kind of forgets about everything after channel 2, and channel 1 goes hard pan to the left and channel 2 goes hard pan to the right. So with those limitations in mind, I thought, okay, what's the only setup that's going to work here? And I realized I take the left and the right audio out of the mixer. I put those into the channels in the interface, because there are only 2 channels in the small interface, and I take that then goes into the computer or the laptop. And if my laptop were more up to date, I'd be able to use my proper Lumix camera as well. But my laptop's just a little bit too old. I can't do it, and I don't have the right kind of camera for it. But kind of getting the sound right was kind of integral to me in streaming, because I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to play, I don't want to just hoping for the best, pointing an amp at an iPad or a phone or whatever and thinking, okay, well, this is going to work. So I took a bit of time, and I control it all from, and on my streams on my YouTube channel or on Facebook or whatever, I do it all the same way. I control everything. I've got a little iPad mixer here, and I do all my reverbs from this. So I've got my little short reverb, and I've got my long reverb, and I've got my delays here. And I was messing around with a rotary sound earlier. I haven't really messed with this a whole lot yet, so I don't really know how to manipulate it, but if I can get the sound.
Wow.
So it's
cool.
it's just those kind of things were important to me for streaming, because if I'm going to get somebody to watch a stream for an hour or an hour and a half of me playing as if it were a concert, well, the sound had better be good, because I tend to find that, and even on YouTube, you probably know this, some videos, the resolution and the quality is terrible, but you still watch it because it sounds okay.
Yeah.
And that tends to annoy people less than the visual side. Yeah. Or than the audio side, I should say. So the sound right, the video can be middling, just okay. And I mean, I'm using my laptop camera for this, and I have a light in the background, and that tends to work okay for the streams. I'm getting away with it so far, but the sound was the kind of the crucial point.
The sound is excellent. I think the combination of the pickup and the 3 microphones is amazing. How are you going to, I mean, as a musician, I used to hate in-ears, and now I love them. I love them now. I can hear the stereo effects. I'm in my own little world. I've had a year to get used to in-ear monitors. How are you going to feel walking onto a stage now without 3 microphones and then all this stuff? Are you going to miss? Like, do you see a benefit in this?
I'm going to be absolutely delighted going back onto a stage, because I don't like in-ears at all. I mean, I've used them before, but you probably know this already. But if you go to Nashville and you look at any of the session bands that play, or the guys who are usually on the road who then keep up their chops by playing around town, you won't see one of those people using in-ears. And the reason is that in-ears cause your pitch to be a bit off kilter. In-ears, most of them kind of create a small vacuum in your ear, so your pitch, your idea of pitch kind of is a bit off where it should be. So all of those guys and girls, they've all got monitors, and they just know how to use them, and their technique is refined, so they don't need to push the volume, they don't need to, there's no squeals, any of that stuff. They all use monitors. And what you don't get from this is the feeling of that kind of that volume or that energy that comes from a live setting. So that I'll be more than happy to trade all of this for that when it comes back. But as I said a second ago, it was important as well just to know that if I were recording an album, I'd have a studio sort of stereo sound, I should say. And so I said, why not try and do the same thing on the stream? If I can get this microphone, just if you're listening on headphones, you'll hear that only in your left ear, and then this one only in your right ear.
I like
this
that.
one in the middle, and then also with the octave effect as well, to have that coming through, and to still be able to use. I mean, the only limitation on this obviously is if I use my loop pedal, you only then hear the pickup channel. You don't hear the audio from the microphone.
That's my problem with a looper.
Yeah, and I mean, you can get around that as well by, if you wanted to route these into the mixer and then put the loop between the mixer and the second interface, you could do that, but I'm not really that bothered doing that. It's not something that I need to do, so I don't do it. But I mean, that would be, I mean, if you were looking to put a loop in between, you could do the same setup as I have, having your mixer, taking the audio out of the mixer into the loop pedal, and then the loop pedal into your second interface, and then the second interface into wherever the audio goes into your laptop or computer.
I do agree about the feel. It's like the digital stuff now. The digital electric amps, they're so good, but they don't have any feel to them like an amp does behind you. I think for me, I play in some little tiny bars with one crappy little speaker to right of me. So compared to that, this is heaven. If you're playing in a theater or something with proper monitoring and stuff like that, I can imagine that would be a lot better. But I don't know. I guess I also don't have people screaming Freebird at me either when I'm sitting here playing. You don't have that
they're
problem.
Just saying it in the comments instead.
All right, so that's the gear that you're using. So yeah, quite a simple, so great pickup, great guitar, the octave pedal, and a great mix with the right reverbs and things. I mean, it sounds great.
Yeah, and it's nice as well, in the same way that, you set up your pedal board to have presets. It's the same way I put in a bit of time at the start getting reverbs right and getting, messing around with compressors and delays and stuff like that. And it's all for a goal. It's all just for my own comfort sitting here, because I mean, whatever way the likes of Facebook or YouTube, whatever, they're going to compress it on the other side one way or another. So I just have to give it as clean and as strong a signal as possible, and whatever comes out on the other side is not really any of my business. They compress it whatever way they want to suit their bandwidth, and I have to just deal with that. I have to just make my peace with it. So I have.
One thing though, when you do go on stage again, will you still be controlling those effects yourself, or do you not do that?
If I have a sound man with me, which is not too often, I prefer to let them do all the effects. The only one I like controlling myself is the octave, to bringing it in the right place, because sometimes I change that idea on the fly. But the likes of reverbs, if I could not have to deal with that, that'd be great. The same, maybe the delay pedal as well. I bring that in and out in very specific places. But yeah, I mean, most of the time I am controlling my own effects. Because one day could be my own show, the next day could be a festival where you just get a line check. So I prefer having as much control as possible. But I mean, even before I went on tour in 2019, I remember setting up a lot of different monitors, different brands of monitor that I got on loan from other people, and setting them up outside just to kind of mimic what it might sound like outdoors. You know what I mean? Like running extension cables out of the house into the back garden, setting up these different monitors, and then trying out what the sound was like, and trying to find a sort of a default sort of a place to start. You know, so that when I plugged in somewhere, I was kind of, it's like, you know, if anything else, what am I trying to say? If everything else kind of falls apart, at least I can sort of rely on this sound or this work that I've done.
Just quickly, people are saying I'm much louder than you. I think that's because I have a shotgun mic right in my face and your mic is further away. So
I'll come in closer to my mic.
Actually, that's good, yeah. I'll just bring mine down 5 as well. Sorry about that, guys. Just quickly before we move on, I'm sure a lot of people want to check out that Boss pedal now. Would you mind sharing what your settings are on that Boss pedal? Even if you just
okay.
1 o'clock, whatever.
It's attached to my pedal board, but let me have a look. So my direct level, okay, there are 4 knobs on this. It's a Boss OC3 Super Octave. My direct level is at 3 o'clock, so it's like 75% turned up. My octave level is also at 3 o'clock. The range button, which is the third one on it, that's the one I adjust on stage depending on where I want it to cut off. So for example, I should just, before this, the 4th knob, the one on the right, has to be set to poly. Okay, so that has to be turned around completely to the right. Okay. Yeah, that's the one. So the knob on the right has to be turned completely to the right for the poly. The first 2, direct level and octave, are both at about 3 o'clock if you look at the face of the clock. And then the third one, so the second knob from the right, that says range octave 2 drive. Okay, if you set that to poly, the 4th one to poly, the third knob then becomes range. And what that does is it allows me to set where the octave actually kicks in. So for example, if I turn that all the way up, okay, it means that every note on the fretboard up to about the high E here is going to get an octave effect. So you hear. Okay, they've all got an octave effect. But where it comes in really handy is if I set it at about between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. Okay, so say somewhere around here, right? It means that these notes up here, they're not affected because you've essentially told the octave pedal to forget about those frequencies. But these ones, they still have the octave effect. So if I'm playing like, and I've exaggerated the bass a bit here just so you hear it over the stream. I usually wouldn't have it as prominent as that in the mix. But the idea there is that the lower strings, like, put it this way, if I climb up the guitar fretboard, you hear the octave kind of die out. It's gone.
Yeah.
No octave. And then I hit about kind of that like E flat here is where I aim to kind of cut it off.
So do you change that per song, or do you leave that on the same setting all the time?
Oh yeah, per song, definitely. Yeah.
Oh wow!
Because I know where I want it to cut off. So for example, if I play my tune Riverdance, do I have the? Yeah, I do. If I play my tune Riverdance, right, which is up here, I put the capo on the 7th fret, and I get my little piece of plastic here and just put it in between the strings. If I play Riverdance, I put that range knob like directly in the middle at like 12 o'clock. So that allows me then, because I'm going further up the fretboard on the guitar, I need to make more of the fretboard kind of octavized, if that's a word. So I end up with okay, and then I turn my let me just get my delays on for this.
What is this? Is this like the Johnny Cash thing you've got in the strings there?
A little bit, yeah. It's a trick that I saw Martin Taylor using years ago for a piece of his. I think it's called Down at Kokomo's. But I saw him, like, he tore up a piece of cardboard and put it in. So I've got these download cards for my album Marrakech, and I cut some up into little strips, or sometimes, like, I used to use an old credit card, or like hotel room keys are really good for that as well. When you're finished with them and you forget to hand them back at the reception, I cut those up as well because it's the same kind of plastic material, and it imitates the sound of like a West African kora, which is like a double-sided harp. really cool sound. But when you put the delays on with this. Second part of the tune, it kind of gets a bit madder. And percussion.
Awesome. I love that.
But yeah, the octave is like a really integral part of that, because again, as I said earlier, using it sparingly. If I bring it in at the start, it loses its effect altogether. But if I start off the tune, when your ear still hears that as a kind of a low frequency, and then like halfway through the tune, there's a part that speeds it up. Where is it? That's when your kind of ears go, oh wow, where did that sound come from? So it's like a smack in the face nearly when you hear that coming in.
You're using quite a lot of effects, but you're using them very tastefully, and I think that's the key. Like, use effects, but use them to suit the song, to serve the song, not just to say, hey, here's a huge like whole reverb for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, I think in my entire set, there's probably only 3 tunes that I use effects. Like I'll always have a reverb on, because obviously you need a bit of reverb to match what you hear naturally, because that kind of dry clinical sound doesn't really suit anything. Yeah. But aside from that, like a long reverb or a big delay or something like that, I mean, I only really think I use it maybe, there's 3, maybe 4 songs in my set, or tunes in my set, that I'll use those effects for. And then the bass is kind of, I bring it in and out as I need it. And the only other one that I use then that's on the pedal board is there's a freeze pedal that I use as well, which is the electro harmonics pedal. And I only use that if I'm playing, I do a guitar arrangement of Riverdance, and if I'm playing that, I bring that in at the very start. Otherwise I don't touch it. So I don't really need, I have a loop pedal and a freeze pedal on my board, but depending on what I'm going to play in a set, I don't actually need them. I could get away with a smaller pedal board.
I may ask you to finish with Riverdance, if you don't mind.
I won't do it today because I'm not actually completely set up for it. So
okay.
Had we foreseen that, I would have set up a bit differently for it. Yeah. I
love the freeze pedals as well. I mean, it just sustains the chord and makes that kind of soundscape, and then you can play over it. I love all that's. I like gear like that where I can be a solo musician and have that stuff to back me up. That's why I like it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Let's read through the rest of the comments, and then I'll ask you to play us a song to finish up. So, Lee says, first of all, Graham says, Shane's shirts are always dapper. So what's your shirt?
I owe you a pint.
Lee says, I went to a bar in Dublin, think it was called O'Donoghue's. Best weekend I've had in years. Loved the fact people just sat down and played music. Yeah.
Oh yeah, O'Donoghue's is great for music.
BMO, good friend of mine, asked the question that I asked earlier, and we did kind of talk about it, but I think it's still a great question to talk about one more time. How do you teach swing and feel in music?
That's a hard one, because it's kind of 2 different questions there. So, teaching swing in music, I mean, learning swing music, learning strumming patterns and kind of rhythmic patterns at a very basic kind of foundational level can be important, because you build that up into kind of a more structured thing. But the other exercise, and I was only speaking about this with one of my students the other day, it's important as well to know that when you're playing different types of music, that just because something feels like it's in like for example hornpipes in Irish music, like you would assume listening to them that they're all just kind of straight notes. But what's not obvious to your ear there is the first note that you play in every bar is actually twice as long as the second one. It's actually like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, and that in and itself is a sort of a swing, sort of within a melody. Swing as far as backing a lot this kind of stuff. You know, where it's not really straight. That is something that comes with kind of learning those patterns at a slow speed and then kind of building them up to tempo. So finding someone who'll explain, okay, well, you know, you have to think of this, you know, as a longer beat, think of this one as a shorter beat. There's no real easy way to explain that straight off the bat. It's something you just have to sit down with and kind of go over and sort of study. And then as far as feel in music, I mean, that's more related, I suppose, to how you approach your instrument, more than anything else, and understanding how your instrument fits into sort of a larger ensemble. So for me, a guitarist with good feel usually plays the guitar fairly lightly. I mean, the harder you play a guitar, the worse it sounds. I mean, if you play a note really gently or a chord really gently, more of that chord sustains overall. So if you have your guitar set at a loud volume, as in your pickup is doing the work, that chord is going to sound amazing. Because they're all sustaining at similar volumes. And the problem is with this style, particularly the style I play, if I play this aggressively, it sounds crap. If I play anything that I do at a really hard, like high octane way, it doesn't sound good, like the balance goes completely. But if I play in a controlled way and I'm smart with my technique, in that, for example, the piece I'm going to play is to finish this up is Marrakech, a composition of mine, and in that, you know, it sounds like I'm really digging into the guitar, but realistically it's actually my technique. Like my right hand technique is clawed as opposed to the kind of more traditional finger picking style. So if I'm clawed up like this and I'm picking kind of upwards on the strings, it's not necessarily that I'm playing the guitar any harder, it's just my approach is different, so the strings sound kind of snappier rather than
Actually, what gauge strings do you use?
Good question. I think at the moment I've got 12s on this, but I mean, if put it this way, if it feels too light, I put 13s on it, and if it feels too heavy, I put 11s on it. And then as far as string brand, I prefer Martin strings, and they endorse me as well. So whenever I'm like gigging or performing or whatever, I'll use the Martins, because for me they seem to feel and sound the best for the most part. Occasionally I'll switch around brands just to give the guitar a break as well, because I'm not sure if this is kind of widely felt or not, but if you switch around the brand of strings on your guitar, and kind of from a physical point of view, it makes sense in that every brand and type of string has puts a different amount of tension on the soundboard. Like it might be 55 kilos instead of 53 kilos or whatever it might be, or a certain amount of pounds. Your guitar is going to react differently if it's under more or less tension at the same pitch. So if you give your guitar a break and switch over to a different string brand and then switch back to the ones you were using, your guitar will actually sound brighter and a bit fresher overall. So at the moment I've got Diodarios on this guitar, purely because I have had Martins on it for the last year straight, or however long I've owned this guitar, I've had Martins on it non-stop. So right now I'm using the Diodarios, and I can feel already that they don't suit as well as the Martins, but I know that as soon as I put the Martin strings back on, the guitar is going to sing again. So yeah, it's kind of an old adage of finding the strings that your guitar likes rather than finding the strings that you like.
I've heard Tommy say that as well. And also I've heard that Tommy has his volume really loud, his action really low, and then he plays light. And that's same as what you're doing, right? I
do the same thing, and it's because of balance. The balance between the strings is really, really important when you're a solo guitar player. And if you hammer into the string gets a lot of attack, but not a lot of note, or not a lot of tone. So I'm aiming not to get the kind of like as strong as I can. I'm aiming to get that sound. But when it's amplified, it's mega. It's really, really mega. And you can EQ that in a certain way and use reverbs in a certain way to make that sound huge, when realistically you're actually treating the guitar very, very lightly. So that's it's a really, really common thing among guitar players, is that they think that I have to play really hard, and it's the opposite. It's like the softer you play and the more you push your equipment, the better you're going to sound.
Yeah, I think I've started doing that, like giving myself more headroom rather than just like riding things maximum all the time. Like give yourself somewhere to go as well, and also let the PA do the work, right? As well, it makes total sense.
I don't really, I've messed around with using compressors and stuff like that, but I've never really liked the effect that they've had on what I do on the guitar. I prefer to just kind of nearly be my own compressor in that I play lighter and the guitar has more chance to breathe, and then it sounds better overall, rather than trying to get a compressor to come in and shove some stuff up and squish some other stuff down. It's like if you can avoid that, that's a great place to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's the same things we said with the guitar, right? Start with a good guitar, start with a good sound, and then go from there rather than trying to fix things at the end. Andy says, tuning by ear is part of ear training, or it becomes clear when you start training your ear. Yeah, so definitely very important.
Is that a question or a statement? I'm not sure.
I think it's both. I think it might be both. I'm not sure either.
Tuning by ear is part of ear training, or it becomes clear when you start training your ear. Well, to me, I mean, I've always done it, so I don't really know. But I know that if you become more familiar with interval training, as in if you're able to pick up the guitar and go, okay, that's definitely a fourth, like E up to A, that's a 4. And then if you think, okay, well, E up to A, that's a fourth, A up to D, that's a fourth, D up to G, that's a fourth. Well, that's got me that far. And then if I'm able to identify, that's a major third, okay? So I don't, and again here, this is where the perfect pitch comes into it. I could tell you that these notes are like, like an A flat, but like, that's not important. The important point is that instantly I said, that's definitely a major third, and that's much more important than knowing what the notes are, because you've also got a major third here as well. So if you know that you can tune, okay, a fourth, and then a fourth, and then a fourth, and then a major third, and then a fourth, and you're able to tune your guitar by doing it that way. And the other kind of, that's not really a shortcut, but these are the same pitch, the lowest string and the highest string, E and E, So if you can start there and work that way, I mean, that's the only way I know how to teach people, because I said I've been doing it since I was young, so it's not something I've ever really had to think about.
Yeah. Brad says Planksty was always my favourite Irish band.
Oh yeah, great. Planksty were phenomenal band, yeah.
Bimo says Callum Graham and Don Ross are great fingerstyle players.
Certainly are, yeah. I've got Don Ross coming up on my Truefire channel shortly, the Fretboard Atlas.
Just tell us about your teaching and your channel. Just give us the overview of that.
Yeah, so as well as my own YouTube channel, which is Shane Hennessy Music, I've also got a teaching channel on Truefire.com, which is called the Fretboard Atlas. And I'm giving people as much insight as I can into what it is that I do on the guitar and the way I approach music. So I've broken it down into 5 sections on the channel. I have a section called All Things Guitar, which covers like fingerstyle, flat picking, thumb picking, anything and everything to do with styles of guitar. I'm covering it there. Then I've got Under the Hood, which is kind of the more practical side of things and maybe the more theory side. So I'm going through stuff age system, and I'm going through kind of basic music theory and chord extensions and inversions and the way to think about music as well in terms of musical lines rather than chord by chord. It's so much more effective as a musician. Then there's a section where I teach all my original pieces, and that's called Shane's Originals. I've got a whole section about Irish music, as in Irish traditional music, and particularly the bits and like the points of Irish music that helped me as a musician in a big way. I'm covering those. Excuse me. And then I've also got a section which is interviews that I'm kind of conducting with some of my favourite musicians. So I think that a comment mentioned Don Ross there. So I've got Don Ross lined up for an interview very shortly. And I've been interviewing people like, you're probably familiar with Richard Smith, the finger-picking guitar player.
Oh yeah, he's a fellow Brit.
Yeah. He did a fantastic interview with me. I recently interviewed Joe Robinson, Emil Ernebro, Alex Misko, if you've seen him from YouTube, and Zunke Meinen. And I'm trying to get a big mix of players, like not just necessarily the fingerstyle guitar world, but like the Irish guitar world. So I had David Howley from Wee Banjo 3, John Doyle from Solace is coming on as well, Clive Carroll, he's kind of a crossover between the two of those. And then from like the world of flamenco guitar, I have John Walsh coming on. Tim Eady is another trad guy. Mike Dawes, I recently interviewed him as well. And Judith Beckendorf. And then like the next interview I'm doing is with a guy called Newell Sumbu, who was originally from the Congo. but he lives in Ireland, and he's an amazing, like, he does all this African fingerstyle stuff. So I'm really looking forward to kind of interviewing him as well. And down the line, like, I have Jay Curran as well. He's the musical director and the guitarist for Niall Horan, the pop star. So I mean, I'm kind of trying not to draw not so much on just the fingerstyle world, but on the kind of life as a working musician in general, from different genres of music and in different roles as well. So I want people to kind of get an insight not only into how to play the guitar and also how music works and also my original tunes and Irish trad music, but also hearing from people that do this for a living and kind of the stuff that they would kind of advise or recommend. So I mean, it's a fairly jam-packed channel. There's already 260 videos worth of material up there, and it only started at the end of last month. So there's a huge amount of stuff up there.
Wow.
So yeah, anyone that's interested in it, look up truefire.com or just type into Google or wherever you search the Fretboard Atlas.
Fretboard Atlas.
Hennessy, and that'll come up there.
And I'll put all of your links. Sorry, I'll put all of those links below when we finish this as well, so that if anyone wants to come back, they can just click on them. Sorry, go ahead.
Fantastic, yeah. No, and I was just going to say it's a subscription. Well, so you subscribe every month, and you get access to all these videos. And I've tabbed out all of the videos that I've put up as well. So anything that you're looking to learn or cover or whatever, there's a guitar tab available in PDF and in Guitar Pro format as well. So you've got literally all the resources that I can give you. Bar doing a one-on-one, and that's also an option as well. The kind of the higher subscription package gets you a one-on-one lesson with me as well.
That's great. Bimo says, if you're ever offered a Linda Manza guitar, do not decline. I've not heard of Linda Manza.
I've heard of these. Yeah, you may have seen one of her creations. Pat Metheny has a guitar that has about 6 headstocks on it, and it's got
I know.
strings and high
I have
strings.
heard of her. Yeah.
She made that for him. She's a very kind of renowned luthier. I've never played one of her guitars, but I've heard very nice things about them, and as I said earlier on, most of the luthier built guitars, I mean, they're unbelievable guitars, but the issue with my playing style is that I'm so aggressive in the way that I treat the guitar, and what I look for from the guitar is not necessarily what a builder might actually build in terms of getting every single little bit of frequency out of a guitar body. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the attack and the clarity and the balance. So yeah, that's
I'm really glad you said that today, because I feel like on Mondays and this whole thing about Martin guitar, it's all about tone, this big, dreadnought with 13s. And some of those players, look, I put this on when I posted our video of Ride On in the Maton group. I didn't want to cause a stir, but there is a thing on the internet about Maton guitars aren't as good as Martin guitars, or this kind of stuff. I don't agree with it at all. But it's also interesting that certain guitars are suited to certain styles as well. Like not everyone wants just a big booming dreadnought. It doesn't work for some people's styles of playing, and that's very clear from what you've said today about your guitars there. You need a certain instrument for what you do, and that's a really good thing to remember.
There's no guitar that's actually objectively better or worse than another guitar. It's just a different sound. Like, fair enough, if you pick up a guitar that's been factory made and it costs you $200 or pounds or whatever it is to buy, and you pick up a $5,000 guitar that's made by some luthier, I mean, you're going to notice some differences, but there may still be some things that the $200 guitar will actually suit better than this big acoustic cannon. For example, on this guitar here, this Kieran McNally, this is like the full bells and whistles sort of guitar. If I strum this with one of my blue chip picks, I mean, I get this big ringing tone from the guitar, and it renders it nearly completely useless. I can't use it at all. Whereas if I picked up a guitar off the shelf that's like some, nondescript brand, it won't do that, and it might suit a recording session a bit better. Now, the thing is, it's the same way as shoes, right? If you get a pair of boots, you're not going to wear your pair of boots to like a formal dinner, but similarly, you're not going to wear a pair of stilettos walking up a mountain. You know what I mean? It's like
actually, I did that last year.
You walked up a mountain in stilettos.
Yeah, I did.
It was charity.
I was trying to get a viral video on YouTube.
Well, look, I better exactly
play this.
As you said, like, that's exactly
just to make sure you know it's a joke. Okay.
But it's exactly the point you made. There's no guitar brand that is better than another brand. They're just different. And the same with the Maytons. I've always found that the Maytons, they have their own voice. What people mistake for tone is they mistake volume for tone.
Yep.
So they hear, like, they pick up your average Mayton guitar and they go, oh, it doesn't sound as good as whatever. And it's okay, yeah, they are generally quieter than most of the guitars, but listen to the sweetness in the tone. Listen to the way that it sustains and the way the balance of the guitar is compared to picking up like a D18 or something like that. Yeah. That's a sound, at least to my ear, that I want more than that big dreadnoughty, like huge sound. And like if you're a bluegrass guitar player, like by all means, yeah, you need a big dreadnought. You're probably playing acoustically, competing against a banjo sitting over there and a fiddle and whatever else and a mandolin. Like those, they cut through music, so you need to have volume, especially in your lower end, to be able to cut through all of that. But it's just like shoes. That's the best analogy I can give you. You're going for running, you're going to wear your sneakers or your runners or whatever. If you're going for a formal dinner, you're going to wear a different type of shoe. If you're going hiking or you're going up a mountain, you're going to wear a different type of shoe again. And guitars are exactly the same. There's not one that's better than another. It's just one that suits a job better than another.
But also, don't compare a Maton 808 with 11s to a D18 with 13s. Like, make sure you do like for like as well.
That's it. And that's the argument, again, comes back to tone versus volume. You know what I mean? The Maton with 11s, you crank that up in a PA system and it's really comfortable to play, that's going to sound killer. You get your Martin with 13s and you try to play any of my stuff on that, I mean, your hand is going to hurt. You're not going to get the snappiness that you want, most likely, unless it's set up like a nailed to the fretboard. Like I remember when I did a tour of the Martin factory in Pennsylvania. I was playing a show in Bethlehem in Pennsylvania, the Steel Stacks, and I was invited by Chris at Martin to come up and check out the factory. That's
an honor.
Yeah, it was nice to be asked. So I went in, came in, checked out the factory, and he brought some of the guitars, like out of they have these guitars that are in cases, the special guitars, and some of them, you're not allowed to touch or even look at. It's like the Mona Lisa. But he brought out some of these kind of rare guitars and whatever, and some of them were gorgeous, and some didn't like it all. And it's not because they didn't sound good. They all sounded good in their own way, but some of them didn't suit me because I'm used to having a kind of a low action, having kind of light gauge strings for the most part, and really depending on that percussiveness. Like one thing that I always thought that I brought from my days playing bass, I always looked up to Mark King in Level 42. And I watched an interview with him where he was saying about how light his strings are because he needs it for all the slapping work that he does. He needs the strings to be loose. And I'm exactly the same. I need a guitar that sounds tight but that feels loose. So to me, the tightness that I get from the kind of McNally sound is great, but he also made it in such a way that the strings still feel loose. And with the Maytons, I've always found that as well. Like they've always felt loose. I always experimented with putting 13s on to get the sound a little bit tighter. But the kind of an Australian-made guitar in Irish humidity or in this climate, there's a lot of work needs to be done to keep the moisture out of the guitar as well. So once I kind of figured that out after about 2 years of owning a Mayton for the first time, I was kind of plain sailing from there.
Stephen said more pickups to review. That's right. There's always a new pickup to review, Stephen. Jerem says, hey, Aaron and Shane. Sorry I'm late. We'll watch this later. Thank you, my friend. We met on the Tommy camps as well.
Cool.
Andy, thank you for the super chat. He says, have a St. Patrick's Day dram. What's a dram? Oh, a drink, right? On me.
Drink, yeah.
Great info here. Thank you. I should pick up my acoustic more. I use a thumb pick on the telly, Jerry Donahue style. Very cool.
Cool.
My friend Jerry Cherry's here from Brooklyn. Says, hi, Aaron. Sweet playing, Shane. Aaron doesn't care about gear. That's not true, obviously. True. Audio is the most important part of a musician's video. Yes, I agree. My mic is twice as loud as yours. I apologize. That wasn't intentional. Andy said, I'm 6 times louder than Shane. Sorry about that. Then he's laughing. That's fine. AM Design says, Aaron, many crappy bars east of New York City would gobble you up if they knew you. Well, that's the whole point, AM Design. I don't want to play crappy bars in East New York City, Long Island.
Next time I'm playing in New York, you should come up and I think the last place I played was
I will definitely.
Last gig I did in New York. The Rockwood Music Hall, I think, was the last venue.
You were playing a house concert, and I couldn't come because I had a gig the same night. I used
Oh,
to
the
play.
house. Yeah, I did a house concert for musicians in New York.
Yeah, I was going to come,
Yeah,
but
that's good
I was
fun.
playing on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and of course,
Yeah,
most people were going to play. That's the other thing about being a musician, right? Other people are going to be
yeah,
playing the nights that you're playing. But I
yeah.
will definitely in the future. Yeah, I can't wait. Chazza says hi, Aaron and Shane, and they're talking about Guinness and Guinness cake here. And Stephen said, I love this. I learned so much. Yeah, so did I. It's so great to
Great,
speak to other
fantastic.
musicians and just hear how they do things. Tolga's here. Good to see you, Shane.
Oh, Tolga. Hey, Tolga.
Awesome. And Boston O'Donoghue from Northern California.
That's a really Irish name, Boston O'Donoghue.
Come to the Pacific Coast. All the bands have played from the 90s through the 90s up till now. San Diego, LA,
Yeah,
Santa Cruz.
I was supposed to. Where was it? Sacramento. I was supposed to play in, or Santa Cruz. I think it was Sacramento. I was supposed to do a show in last year, and that would have been my first gig on that side of the country, leading me off on tour. But unfortunately, yeah, didn't work out. It'll work out again next year, the year after, I'm sure.
AM said they're not crap. Oh, yeah, I didn't. I was just kidding, AM Design. I do miss playing live. I played live my whole life. So I used to play in bars when I wasn't old enough to play in bars. But I just see a lot of benefit in the internet. I wish I'd done the internet before. Like I said, I've always done YouTube, but I want to do more online. I love the fact that we did that cover song, and within a few days we had 500 people hear it. You know, it's very hard for me to play in a venue and have that many people hear what I'm doing, and they're usually blind drunk while I'm doing it. So I see a lot of benefits to this. That was my final question, Shane. Something good that came out of lockdown and something you're looking forward to post-lockdown.
Something good that came out of lockdown. There's a couple of things. I mean, I released 2 albums during the lockdown last year. One of them was recorded just before we went into lockdown. That was Raindance. And then one of them was recorded with help from the Irish government. So from Culture Ireland and the Department of Culture and Music Network and those kind of groups, the Arts Council. And I recorded an album of kind of Irish influenced, trad influenced guitar music called Idircheol. And a lot of that was used for a TV show that I did some composition for called Saulu that went out on TV in Ireland in December of last year. So I mean, they were good things to come out of the lockdown so far. And then, you know, I also delved into music theory in a big way for the first time since I was in school. You know, I always had a bit of a kind of a grasp on it and kind of made my own sense of things. But I sat a music theory exam like a grade 8 theory exam last December, and I passed it. So that was like a big lockdown goal for me. And the one that I'm currently working towards is my fellowship diploma of the London College of Music.
Wow.
So that's a performance diploma that I'm going for. So that's kind of keeping me going at the moment. That's one of my big goals. So things like that have been really good, and remembering that you can play for fun. That sounds really, really obvious to most people, but when you play music for a living, and when your income depends on it, and when you're always busy with music, you can very easily forget that the reason you play music is because you enjoy it and that it's your passion. And something I'd forgotten a little bit was that I remember turning around at one point, maybe 2 or 3 months into the lockdown, and thinking, when was the last time I actually picked up the guitar and played, not with a goal in mind, but purely for my own enjoyment? And the answer was, it's been way too long. You know, that usually only happens in airport lounges when there's a delayed flight, and I'll take out the guitar. But even at that, I need to practice this, and that didn't go well last night. I need to practice this one up, and I need to try this out. And what about if I move this up here? But having a time to purely be creative and nearly childlike in your in your experimentation, that is really, really important as a musician, and you can't forget that. That's actually one of the light bulb moments that one of my guests said on the Fretboard Atlas is, when you get up in the morning, don't have a goal. Just pick up your instrument, start playing, noodle around the guitar, see what happens. And I've been doing that the last couple of mornings since you said that, and it's been fantastic just to have no goal in mind and just purely enjoying it for the sake of enjoying it. No like outcome at the end of it, because we all get, you know, we're in a world that values productivity over anything else now. You know, the constant Instagram posts, the 15-second clips, the TikToks, and all that stuff puts a lot of pressure on you to be productive, to produce something every day. And you'll find very few examples in history of people who were ridiculously, ridiculously prolific to the point where they were coming up with new stuff every day and possibly every couple of hours.
Yeah.
So to remember that you don't need to do that and not to get burnt out is really, really important. Yeah. And one thing I'm looking forward to when the pandemic ends, aside from getting back touring, is finally having a good pint of Guinness again. I can't wait to have a decent pint of Guinness. I'm going straight down to the Choc Dolman in Carlow, and I'm going to line 2 of them up, and the first one is going to go like this, and the second one I'll sip away on. So that's my answer to that question.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. Like I said earlier, it's great to be busy, but it's great to have time. And we mustn't forget that in the future. The balance. It's always been hard for working musicians to have a balance, hasn't it? Because you have to be looking for the next gig all the time. You have to be focused on that. And then when you're a kid and you have time, we're so creative when we're younger, and then that can sometimes be lost out the door when we have to pay the bills. So it's been a good thing to remember.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend. This went on much longer than I thought it was going to, but it's been so interesting. I appreciate your time.
Good.
And I think everyone's enjoyed it too. And if you have enjoyed it, please do us a favor, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Shane's channel. I'll put links below. Have a great St. Patrick's Day. And please do me a personal favor and share our cover of Ride On with your friends and say Happy St. Patrick's Day. I really would appreciate it. And Shane, I'll just ask you if you don't mind to play us one song to play us out.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll give you a little bit of my tune, Marrakech. I just need to get my iPad here to get my effects in order. This is a tune that I wrote kind of as an homage to the city of Marrakech, and I tried to kind of capture the soundscape of Marrakech in this piece of music. So big old delay and a couple of schlappy reverbs as well. So I'm going to try and let's hope that I can manage this. It's going to be a bit hairy on the iPad, but we're going to do our best. So hope you enjoy this. This is Marrakech.
Awesome.
All right. Not in tune. What a way to start, eh? All right, take two.
You only knew because of the perfect pitch. Fantastic. It's been such a great session, Shane. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me, Aaron.
Just quickly, Kat Wade says, so good to see and hear you, Shane. Lots of love from Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, hey, Kathy. Ron and Kathy.
Fantastic.
Lovely, lovely people. I'm looking forward to seeing you both.
I can't wait to see you in person, Shane. I hope we see each other in Nashville at some point. That would be fantastic.
Oh, we certainly will. If you're coming back to Cass, I'll certainly see you there. And if not, when I'm stopping through New York, I'll definitely
Cass,
give you a
we didn't even speak about Cass. Like, I think they're saying they'll do a little bit of it this year and then hopefully back to normal next year. So hopefully I'll see you in
The plan is to do a hybrid
2022.
convention. So a little bit in person and some of it online as well.
Andy says that sounds amazing. I agree. And Roeth gave you a virtual round of applause.
Oh, thanks so much, everyone.
That was fantastic. I'll let you go. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe to Shane's channel. Check out his True Fire content. And one more time, thank you, Shane. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Cheers, Aaron. Same to yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.